Welcome to our Through the Bible study. Today we begin our journey through Genesis chapter 1. I've titled this message, The God Who Speaks. And in this first part of our study, we're going to look at a truth that is just as relevant today as it was at the dawn of creation. God speaks into chaos. Have you ever noticed that the Bible begins differently than any other book? It does not begin with an argument. It does not begin with an explanation. It does not begin with a defense. It simply begins with 4 words. In the beginning, God. Before there were stars in the heavens, before there were oceans upon the earth, before there was time, before there was space, before there was matter. The opening words of Scripture remind us of a truth that changes everything. God is not part of creation. God is the Creator. He was not made. He did not begin. He has always been.
In part 1, we saw that God speaks into chaos. Darkness covered the deep. The earth was without form and void. And yet with a single word, God began bringing order where there had been confusion. Now in part 2 of our study, we discover another important truth. God creates with purpose. As we read Genesis 1, one thing becomes clear. Creation is not random. God does not create recklessly. He does not act without intention. Everything unfolds according to His wisdom. Day by day, step by step, purposefully. Notice the pattern. Before God fills something, He prepares it. Before creatures inhabit the skies, God creates the heavens. Before fish fill the seas, God establishes the waters. Before animals and mankind walk upon the earth, God forms the dry land. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is wasted. Everything is prepared according to His perfect design. How different this is from the way we often live. We rush ahead. We want immediate results. We want answers before the questions have finished being asked. We want the harvest before the seed is planted. But Genesis reminds us that God works according to purpose and order. He is never late. He is never confused. He is never improvising. Perhaps there are seasons in your own life when it seems as though nothing is happening. Prayers appear unanswered. Dreams remain unfinished. Doors stay closed. But what if God is preparing before He is filling? What if He is building a foundation before raising the walls? What if His apparent silence is actually part of His design? Every day of creation reveals a God who knows exactly what He is doing. Light is separated from darkness. Sky is separated from sea. Land emerges from the waters, plants begin to grow. Each step prepares the way for what comes next. The Creator is painting a masterpiece, and every brushstroke matters. Sometimes we only see a single piece of the puzzle. God sees the entire picture. Sometimes we see delays, God sees preparation. Sometimes we see obstacles, God sees opportunities for growth. Sometimes we see confusion, God sees purpose. Genesis 1 teaches us that the God who created the universe is a God of wisdom. His plans are intentional. His timing is perfect. His purposes are trustworthy. And because of that, we can trust Him even when we cannot yet see what He is building. But the greatest act of creation is still ahead. The stars are magnificent. The oceans are breathtaking. The mountains inspire awe. Yet none of these represent the pinnacle of God's creative work. That honor belongs to something far greater. Or rather, someone. In the next part of our study, we come to the crowning act of creation. Humanity bears His image. Let's continue.
In part 1, we saw that God speaks into chaos. In part 2, we discovered that God creates with purpose. Now we come to the crowning act of creation. Humanity bears His image. As Genesis 1 unfolds, we witness an astonishing display of God's creative power. Light fills the darkness. The sky stretches above, the seas gather together. Plants spring from the earth. The sun, moon, and stars take their places in the heavens. Birds fill the air. Fish fill the seas. Animals roam the land. And after each act of creation, God declares that it is good. But then something changes. When God comes to the creation of mankind, the language becomes more personal, more intentional, more profound. God says, "Let us make mankind in our image, after our likeness." Human beings are not simply another creature among many. We are not accidents of chance. We are not meaningless specks in a vast universe. We were created by God, and we were created to reflect Him. What does it mean to bear God's image? It means that every human life possesses dignity. Every person matters. Every person has value, not because of wealth, not because of talent, not because of success, but because each person carries the imprint of the Creator. This truth changes the way we see ourselves, and it changes the way we see others. The lonely person bears God's image. The struggling person bears God's image. The elderly person bears God's image. The unborn child bears God's image. The person across the street, the person across the world. Every human being carries a value bestowed by God Himself. In a world that often measures worth by appearance, achievement, or popularity, Genesis offers a radically different perspective. Your value does not come from what you accomplish. Your value comes from whose image you bear. You belong to the Creator. But being made in God's image is about more than dignity. It is also about purpose. God created mankind to steward His creation, to reflect His character, to represent His rule, to live in relationship with Him. We were created for more than survival. We were created for fellowship with our Creator. And perhaps that explains why so many people feel restless today. We search for meaning. We chase success. We pursue pleasure. Yet something always seems missing. Why? Because nothing in creation can fully satisfy what was designed for the Creator. The image longs for the one it reflects. The heart longs for the one who made it. Genesis 1 reminds us of who we are. We are not forgotten. We are not accidents. We are not without purpose. We are image bearers of the living God, created by Him, known by Him, loved by Him, and called to walk with Him. But there is one final truth we must consider. If God is our Creator, if He made the heavens and the earth, if He created us in His image, then how should we respond? What is the proper response to such a Creator? That is where Genesis 1 ultimately leads us. In the final part of our study, we will discover that the Creator is worthy of our worship. Let's continue. In part 1,
we saw that God speaks into chaos. In part 2, we discovered that God creates with purpose. In part 3, we learned that humanity bears his image. Now we come to the great conclusion of Genesis 1, the Creator worthy of worship. As we step back and look at the whole chapter, one truth rises above every other. Genesis 1 is not primarily about creation. It is primarily about the Creator. The chapter is not asking us to stand in awe of the stars. It is inviting us to stand in awe of the one who made them. It is not calling us to worship the beauty of nature. It is calling us to worship the God whose wisdom designed it all. Think about what we have seen. God speaks, and light appears. God commands, and the heavens are formed. God wills, and oceans gather into place. God creates, and life fills the earth. At every step, creation obeys the voice of its Creator. The sun rises because God ordained it. The tides move according to His design. The seasons follow His command. The stars remain in their courses because He sustains them. Every sunrise is a testimony. Every mountain is a witness. Every ocean wave declares the glory of God. And yet of all God's creation, only humanity has the privilege of consciously worshiping Him. The birds sing because they were created to sing. The oceans roar because they were created to roar. But we have been given the ability to know our Creator, to love Him, to trust Him, to worship Him. That is why Genesis 1 is not merely information. It is an invitation to recognize who God is, an invitation to acknowledge His authority, an invitation to surrender our lives to the one who made us. Perhaps today you feel overwhelmed by the chaos of the world. Genesis reminds us that God is still on the throne. Perhaps you wonder whether your life has meaning. Genesis reminds us that you were created with purpose. Perhaps you struggle with your identity. Genesis reminds us that you bear the image of God. Perhaps you feel small in a vast universe. Genesis reminds us that the Creator knows you by name. The God who spoke light into existence is not distant. The God who formed the stars is not absent. The God who created mankind in His image has not forgotten His creation. He is still speaking. He is still working. He is still calling people to Himself. As Genesis 1 comes to a close, we are left with a choice. Will we live as though we belong to ourselves? Or will we live as those who belong to our Creator? Will we trust our own wisdom? Or will we trust the one whose wisdom formed the universe? Will we ignore His voice? Or will we listen when He speaks? The opening chapter of the Bible begins with God, and rightly so, because every meaningful life begins there as well, with God. Thank you for joining me for Genesis 1, the God who speaks. In our next study, we will turn to Genesis chapter 2 and discover another profound truth, created for relationship. Until then, may the God who spoke light into the darkness speak His truth, His peace, and His purpose into your life. And may we never forget, the Creator is worthy of our worship.